Hi everyone, welcome to Tech Tuesday. This is a re-recording of the webinar that took place on the 11th. We did have a bit of a power failure issue the other day, so I'm just going through this to recap and answer all of the questions that I had submitted. But welcome to Tech Tuesday. This is our FAQ session number 2. And as you know, we cover all kinds of topics here on Tech Tuesday. I typically attempt to go really in depth on one topic and try to relay all of the relevant information as quickly as I can, and generally as deep as I can go. But today's a little bit different. We're going to be doing the exact opposite. And instead of getting into the guts of just one system, we're going to actually touch on a lot of different systems and cover a wide range of smaller features and tips that might make your days just a little bit easier. I also have a few questions ready from people who signed up, and we'll be getting into these as well closer to the end, so stay tuned. First, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have a question throughout the presentation, please type it in the question box. We will answer questions at the end of the presentation. Since this is a re-recording, please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions. My phone number is on the screen, 513-487-5390, and my email is tlevine@crnstone.com. Also, please don't forget to check out the Resource Center, although chances are you're watching us there. It is a good way to check up on webinars you've missed, like this one. You can check out our Resource Center to gain easier access to our proprietary technology, the webinars like I mentioned, white papers, and use our new document search feature to search for carrier documents as well. Feel free to visit our website, www.crnstone.com, and go to the Resource Center to check it out. That being said, does your computer look a little something like this when you turn it on? This is actually really bad as far as an example goes. I don't think many people have a desktop that looks like this exactly, and at least this scattered, but some people do. And I'm not sure if this person is using what's called an organized clutter, which is, sort of strewn everywhere, but you know where everything is. I highly doubt it. It really seems odd to say, but getting organized can not only help you find files, but it can also help your computer last longer and optimize its performance. It also makes things a little less of a headache when dealing with computers because it's very easy to search and find files that you're trying to use. The number one thing that I see when helping people is desktops that look relatively similar to this. In my opinion, if you have more than maybe 20 icons on your desktop, that are not shortcuts to things, then you're probably going to want to reorganize your desktop, and maybe you'll want to log your files similarly to what I have, or at least what I'm presenting. One thing to note, this desktop that I'm showing is in Mac OS, which means it's running on a Macintosh computer. If you run on Windows, which is what we're using, Windows 7, it'll be a little bit different as far as the look goes, but relatively everything should be about the same concept. To illustrate my points, we're going to be using something called the File Explorer, which Mac's version, called Finder, is pretty much exactly similar. It's going to function nearly exactly the same. It might just have a little bit of a different skin. So for once, something we're covering on Tech Tuesday is applicable to Mac users. So stay tuned. The first thing you're going to want to do is to understand what a data structure is. Before we really dig in, you're going to want to understand this because it's sort of how I, at least, and most computer people, visualize the layout of all of the information stored on a computer. You start very narrow and get more and more refined as you go down your file folder tier until eventually you get to the file. Now, to make it a little more relatable, we decided to use football players for this example. Now, I'm not a football fan. I don't really know much about football, so please don't send me hate mail if I get this stuff wrong. But It's actually a really good sort of illustration of how you would narrow things down. Now, we visualized this data table based on the number of yards gained over the entire 2019 season through various methods. And more specifically, we focused on quarterbacks and running backs. Um, as you can see, we start generally with a folder called football players, and then inside of that folder are two folders. There's quarterbacks and running backs. Underneath those folders are actually descriptions of the individual players by yards gained. So like quarterbacks, you can see we decided to divide it up by players with over 2K passing yards and under 2K passing yards. And for running backs, we did under 500 yards run and over 500 yards run. As you can see, Jameis Winston there is the highest total yards gained by passing for quarterbacks at 5,109 for the 2019 season. And Derrick Henry is his counterpart with running backs at a total of 1,540. So if I were looking for just generally yards gained, I would say you probably want to throw, personally, at least based off of this data. One interesting thing that I found while researching this actually is that the least number of yards gained by individual players, at least, respectively, for quarterbacks and running backs, were both negative. Sam Kosh at -2 and Noah Fant at -12. So I just thought that was a little neat. It's worth it also to say that as long as this data structure makes sense to you, that's really what matters in this kind of a thing. I went football players, position, yards, and then player name. But realistically, this could have been rearranged a little bit. Instead of dividing things up by quarterback and yards passing, I could have flopped it. So I could have said maybe make 1,000 yards gained, our tier 2, instead of quarterbacks and running backs for the split. And then under that, I could have gotten even more specific with the number of yards. And then under that folder, I could have had quarterbacks and running backs. The reason I did it this way is because I feel like it is the most condensed way to store this data, which means it would take the fewer number of clicks to sort of jump through this data tree and find what I'm looking for. If I had it organized a little differently, I would have felt that we would have had more folders, more clicking, and that would have meant more time wasted. But it's really just what makes sense to you. In my opinion, the quickest way is probably the best, but it's completely up to you what organization method you prefer. Now, that being said, as mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing an example in File Explorer for how this sort of organization works. Now, first thing to note is that we are going to be using Windows 7 for this demonstration. Windows 10 is incredibly similar, but it's not quite the same as far as how to get into the folders. And Mac OS actually uses something called Finder. It operates pretty much exactly the same, but it'll be skinned a little differently. The icon for Finder is actually sort of a face that's kind of split in two, and both sides are colored a different shade of blue. You're probably very familiar with it if you use Macs, but if not, that's okay as well. Just find Finder and you'll be good to go. It's probably one of the few default icons on your desktop when you start it up for the first time. Also, make sure you're building your tree under users, and I am going to show you this, Windows users, if you're going to build it on your machine. The trick to know is that when you're building these sorts of data structures on your physical hard drive, it's possible for you to actually get into the operating system files and other things. So you need to be wary of that, and you shouldn't be building things like this under those folders. Those are automatically created and managed by your system. If you have two different hard drives as well, and we'll get into that as well in more detail later, you're going to want to make sure you're storing all of your files on the correct one. So, as you can see, now that I've exited the PowerPoint, this desktop is pretty clear. We'll use my own test that I said to see if I should reorganize things. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shortcuts. You can tell they're shortcuts because of the little swoopy arrow at the bottom left-hand corner of the icon. And I have a total of 1, 2, 3 actual file systems here stored. Recycle bin, I haven't counted, and that's because it's actually kind of a core part of your desktop. But it's kind of a folder that you can manage. It's really tricky. If I was a Windows user, I would keep it there. Don't mess with it. It's part of the desktop, and if you delete it, it can cause issues. But anyway, if you're trying to get into the File Explorer on a Windows computer, I have my icon pinned down here in the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to go ahead and just put a spotlight on it right here. If you can see that. And then I'm not sure that I trust that, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight it as well, this bottom corner here, that little folder icon. Now, what that folder is the icon for the File Explorer. However, if you don't see that anywhere on your computer, out on your desktop, it'll look the same. You can also get there by clicking on just My Computer. That will automatically open the File Explorer. Or if you're running Windows 7, like I am on this computer, you can hit the Windows button and click your profile to go and jump directly into your personal folder, which is where I'd save files. I'll show you how that links here in a second. But for now, let's just open Computer. Now, as you can see with the computer option that I've clicked, it shows an OS C drive. Now, that C drive is actually the hard drive that is located on my physical computer. It's where my operating system files are saved, along with my user profile information, and all of the data that you just saw on the desktop. All of these individual drives you're seeing here on the left that appear to be disconnected are part of our network drives section. What those are data storage areas that we are connected to from this computer, but are not locally located on our computer. This is where we save all of our data here internally, and I'm not going to show you much more specifics on that because it's proprietary, but that's what I meant earlier when I said if you have multiple drives, make sure you're saving to the right spot. If you have multiples, you probably already know what we're covering. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, you probably only have this OS C drive that I'm scrolling over. So we're building a file system, so let's click on it. Now, as you can see under our file system here, we have AGB2 and Intel. Those two folders are probably not going to be there on your computer. The AGB2 refers to our AGB system. That's how our brokers can get access to their commission statements, and it's also the internal system we use here. Then it has this Intel folder. The Intel folder is only there because it is a system file folder. We run a Intel Core processor, and so because our computer has an Intel processor, it has an Intel folder. Additionally, we have Novell, which is an old messaging system. You kind of should be getting the picture by now that a lot of these are program files indicated by the C drive. Under the base C drive, you'll see a lot of these general things if you're running any form of Windows. Program files and Program Files 86 are also both core program files for different things running on your desktop. The difference, actually, I learned this week was Program Files refers to any 32-bit program file that runs on your system, and Program Files x86 refer to any 86-bit program files running on your system. Nowadays, a lot of processors run on 86-bit, but in the early days of computers, 32-bit programs and algorithms were the norm, and that's actually governed by what type of processor you're using. Because most computers run 86, you're going to want to make sure you get 86 if you run a 86-bit hard drive for a lot of programs you download, if it gives you an option. If it doesn't, though, 32 can also run. Then there's SW setup, which actually gets into a lot of the Intel HP documentation, more proprietary files related to some documents. Then we have Windows down here. All of the files I just mentioned, if you're not very familiar with computers, you really shouldn't ever access. Those are things that are really core to what your system is and how it operates. If you want to remove a program from your computer, there is another function in Windows that actually does that as well. So you shouldn't be going into your program files and deleting the root actual program files and compiled files that make up those programs unless you really know what you're doing. That's just a general rule of thumb that I have, and it helps other people not to mess up their own computers, have to completely wipe it, and reinstall their operating system. That being said, there are two folders that you are more than free to explore. There's the temp folder, which honestly is empty for me. The reason being because I don't have any files open that are temporary files. These are files that are most often created with internet browsers or other sort of information that's just stored temporarily and then discarded. I like to think of this as sort of like a work desk for your computer. So any program running, any sort of file that gets saved from those programs that can then be discarded gets saved to here. And when you close the program, it tends to get deleted. Users, however, is where you're going to want to go if you're trying to look at your individual profile. Now, I am going to blank the screen share for a moment while I navigate through here. And that's because we have a lot of different users on our machines, and some of them might be a little bit private. So I don't want to show you there what's going on. But when you go under users on your operating system, you should see if you're connected to a large network, all of the names of all of the different users who have logged into that desktop. Now you're going to want to click on the user that is you, not admin or public unless you're running a home version, in which case you are the admin or the public person. But honestly, don't even mess with it unless you know what you're doing. If you are trying to create a file system like we are today, you are going to want to click on your account name. Now I'm booting back up the view. And our account name right up here is T. Levine. That is my account name, and I'm more than happy to share that just as an example. However, as you can see, there are a few different folders here. There's Contacts, Desktop, Downloads, Favorites, Links, My Documents, My Music, My Pictures, My Videos, My Saved Games, and Searches. Now, all of those folders that I just listed off, and you can see I ignored this File Explorer demo here, are actually part of Windows natively. These are called media folders. Well, most of them are media folders, minus downloads, contacts, desktop, and favorites. And what those are folders that Windows has natively installed and created in order to help you organize your files. If I click on desktop, the programs that are listed here should look relatively familiar. The reason being that all of these are here on our desktop. Now, that doesn't include every single shortcut that you see, and shortcuts can be hit or miss, but the things like GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, the Tech FAQ PowerPoint that I'm running right now in the background, and the Excel file that I have open in the background are all on my desktop. That's because this desktop folder under you is actually your desktop. This File Explorer system actually lets you browse all of the data stored on your computer and on your network. So anything stored under here is going to be a part of your computer. Additionally, we have our Downloads folder. As you can see, I have Chrome setup.exe in here, and that's actually from one of the former webinars I did on this computer involving Google Chrome. Any file you download from the internet natively should go under your Downloads folder. Unless your web browser specifies a different place for it to go, and you're not just trying to find something, the Downloads folder is the first place I'd check. Then there are favorites, links, my documents. Those sorts of folders should be relatively self-explanatory. And they're favorites for Internet Explorer specifically. Different links you can copy and paste to documents in there. Music or MP3 files you would download. Pictures or picture files you would have. Videos or video files you would have. and games relate to the save games on your operating system. That being said, I don't really like this method of organization. I enjoy it if you're just, doing personal work and it's not really related to like any professional sort of a insurance set that you're doing. But I don't like having a separate area for like documents, music, and pictures because that tends to be not, you know, really the way people think. People tend to create matches to things based off of maybe who they received an email from, or maybe what carrier a document is related to, not just a document. Maybe you want to look at all of the different files you have for a specific carrier and don't really care if it's a document, an Excel file, a audio recording, or things like that. And that's why I recommend making your own file system under your username. I've made a few demos under the File Explorer demo folder here that I'm going to show you. Think of this File Explorer demo folder as that football folder we had from our earlier example. If I double click on that, as you can see, I have 3 example organization methods that I've created here. I've got by carrier up at the top, by date under that, and by topic under that. Those are the 3 general organization methods that I personally prescribe to, although you could use any organization method realistically, so long as you understand where you're going. I think that organizing things in these 3 methods are probably the easiest and quickest and most logical, but it's really up to you. If I click on by carrier, as you can see, I've created a few different carrier folders here for our example. We have Aetna, Altrua, Anthem, Molina, and Oscar. Now, I'm going to use Aetna as our example, but if I click on that, you can see after carrier, I get more specific. I have my clients, my commission documents, and my quotes all under Aetna. And that way, if I'm trying to find an Aetna quote very quick, I can go carrier, Aetna, quotes, and then I would click on the quote for the person or client that I'm looking at. Another way to do things is by date. If you do use this method, then I would recommend starting generally, like 2020, or 2021, or 2019, and then getting more specific. For instance, under 2019, I have January, February, March, April, and May. Now, if you're using this method of organization, what I will say is you're going to want to do it numerically, meaning you want all of your months and days and years spelled out as far like numerically instead of with words. And the reason for that is everything automatically organizes itself in this Windows Explorer, either by number, being smallest to largest, or alphabetically. And alphabetically is where you get into a bit of trouble. It won't recognize month names as months and order them that way. It'll actually recognize things as alphabetical strings of letters, and it will organize months alphabetically, which is not how we tend to think as people. So I'd recommend using your leading digit up here to mark the month of the year. Additionally, my trail digit on all of these is actually the last 2 of the year that I have in the master file. The reason for that is under recent places here, and I'm not going to click it because there could be something proprietary there, but under recent places, a lot of folders generate, and they're places that you've been previously. This can help you speed up your browsing significantly, but if you're organizing things by date and you just have 2019 is your master folder up here, and then under that master you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12, all that'll appear in the recent places is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. You won't see that 2019 in front of it. Because of that, I'd recommend adding a trail digit if you're trying to organize things by date. The other thing I want to get across in File Explorer, and I'm going to highlight it right up here, is this section of the File Explorer up here that I just highlighted. That's the menu bar. Now, you can navigate around the menu bar very easily by just highlighting over the folder that you want to go back to and clicking on it. As you can see, I now went to by date. But once you do that, you can actually go back under the folder you were just under by using these arrow keys at the far left. And that's a way to quickly jump through your organization table. Now, this last folder I've created by topic right here is actually the one that I think is most relevant. By topic actually is what I use personally. And what that means is instead of organizing things by carrier directly or organizing things directly by date, it's kind of a fusion of the two. As you can see, I have a bunch of folders here. One for bonus programs, one for carrier contracting, one for commission information, one for finance, and one for different quotes. The reason I have things organized this way is because that's just how I think mentally about things. If I wanted to create a new folder under this topic, I could right-click on the blank area of the File Explorer. It could be under here, over on the right, this little blank area to the right of all my folders, but it shouldn't be on an actual folder itself. Then I can say New, and then I can say Folder. Then I can name it whatever I want, something like Example. Now, if I wanted to rename that folder after I've clicked off of it, I can right-click, and as you can see, we have Undo Rename. The reason for this is because I actually made a mistake on purpose. If I just right-click on it, it won't give me the option to rename something. You would first single-click to select the folder, then right-click. When I do that, I gain access to this rename option down here in the menu. It's actually the second from the bottom. And as you can see, the name of the folder is now highlighted, and now I can change it to something like delete this after using. Now, there is actually a limit to how long you can make your file names. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but I will say I get very specific sometimes with my names, and I have never run into an issue. I believe the character limit is somewhere around 100, but please don't quote me on that. That being said, if I go under the commission information folder, as an example here, now I have my carrier organization. If I were to go under each of those individual folders that I had displayed up here, that's the next tier of organization that I would use across all of them. Then if I use Altrua as my example, I have all of my individual commission statements here labeled as the leading name of the carrier, along with the commission month that it credits to. And then under commission schedules, I have things organized by date, which is by year. I don't need to get any more specific here typically, but if they release multiple dates per year of commission schedules, then I tend to just name those commission schedules by what date I received them. In my mind, that's the easiest way to organize commission information, at least. But that sort of almost brings us to the end of this demo, except for one thing. If you're, trying to reorganize your folders yourself, there are two different ways that you can do something like this. The first is by dragging and dropping different files and shortcuts into an open window of File Explorer like I have here. For instance, if I drag my shortcut that I have created here of Microsoft Word 2010 on my desktop over to the File Explorer demo folder, I have a little link that pops up under there that says Move to File Explorer Demo. And if I let go, it'll actually block me because I don't have a good example file to show you for this. Well, actually, I do. I will do that right now. But if I were to close the Excel window that I just have open and drag and then drop it, it'll move that file from my desktop to the File Explorer demo folder that I just created here. Now I can also move files back to the desktop this way as well. You can also use this in order to connect a file that you have saved on a flash drive to a file you have saved on your computer. However, in order to do that, you might want to have another version of File Explorer open and do something a little like this. If I right-click on the folder that I'm trying to file something under and click Open a New Window, then I actually get another window of File Explorer. If I have that open on one end, and I have this open on another, then I can drag and drop between windows, and it will move that file across those windows of File Explorer as I drag and drop. Additionally, if I just want to open another plain version of File Explorer, I can right-click on the File Explorer icon I have down below and hit Windows Explorer, and I get another Window Explorer thing. Now, this actually brings me to another important point. As you can see, this library section has the documents, music, videos, and pictures library that we had before. Now, these 4 files under here, or these 4 folders, I guess they're more akin to, are things that even if you just delete them, will eventually reappear in your operating system. And that's because they're core Windows files. Just because you don't like this organization method doesn't mean you can actually change it. Unfortunately, Windows has that locked down, so please don't try. Otherwise, you could really mess up your OS. Now, that being said, that about wraps up our computer organization lesson for today. But there are a few other things that I hear about quite frequently and that I thought you should all know about as a result. The first being Outlook. Outlook is a very powerful tool that a lot of different agencies use as far as email is concerned. Now, a lot of questions I tend to get about Outlook are actually things like organization of files, which I mentioned before. You can actually organize them very similarly to your desktop file system. As you can see over here, I have a inbox under my example username and a few tiered examples of different folders that I can use. If I right-click on a folder, I can rename it, same as I can in the File Explorer. And if I want to add a new folder to store my files in or my emails, I can go to our main inbox here, right-click, hit New Folder, and then I can type the name of the folder I want to create. In this case, we will go with example 10. And then I can choose where in our file tier system I want to insert this. If I click the little drop-down button by inbox, I see I have the next tier available now. I have example folder 1 and 2, example 3, example 5, and test. I'm going to put this folder under example 3. And as you can see, we have example folder 10 here now. Similar to how we were moving files around on the desktop, I can drag and drop an email into example 10, and I can drag and drop a file to get it out of example 10 and back into the inbox. But that's actually not the most efficient way to start organizing your emails. Dragging and dropping emails will not be very helpful to you because it'll take time to categorize. However, you can actually do this process automatically. If I click File and go to Manage Rules and Alerts, click there, I can actually bring up a whole list of rules that I have already created for this desktop. Rules and alerts are tiny little programs, and don't let that word scare you. I promise it's easy, that you can use in order to automatically start sorting your emails. I have one that I use for all Tech Tuesday related emails, and that's why I request that people put Tech Tuesday in the subject line of any email they send me related to tech. That's because I apply a rule on any message that I receive with Tech Tuesday in the subject line to move to a folder I have called Tech Tuesday. Now, this rule is stored locally on this computer, but If you wanted to create a rule, you would simply go to this screen and hit New Rule. From there, you can choose any of these options just to start. As you can see, there's step 1 and step 2, and this is how most of the rules screen will be divided. Now, if I have moved messages from someone to a folder specifically, then I have a few different things I can modify under that command. Those are viewable under the step 2 menu as little blue hyperlinks. If I click on one, then it'll bring up any relevant selection to that little blue hyperlink that I just clicked on to add a variable into my rule. To do this as an example, I'm going to do one for what I have already displayed, which is moving anything that I receive in a subject line. I'm going to start doing that by selecting the Apply Rule on Messages I Receive option down here. There are a lot of different options you could choose, so I recommend playing around with them and making use of their file system as you see fit. Once I select an option, make sure there's no variable I have to enter, I click Next. From there, I can choose another variable. As you can see in English in step 2, it currently says, apply this rule after the message arrives. From there, I select a different option here for adding a level of refinement. I want, after the message arrives, it to look at a specific word in the subject line. So I'll select that option. That then populates that option below, and I click on the blue hyperlink to enter in that variable. It tells me to specify words or phrases to search for in the subject line, and I'm going to search for Tech Tuesday. I'm going to add that this way. You can also add multiple words or lists of words in by just continuing to type in here and hitting add. For instance, Tech Tuesday in lowercase, or Tech, or Tuesday. Now, normally I wouldn't add that because if someone sends me an email with just Tuesday lunch, for instance, as the header, it would then throw that into the Tech Tuesday folder. But for the example, I'm going to leave it in. If I wanted to remove it, though, actually, this is a good learning opportunity. If I click on Tuesday here and hit remove, then I can remove that Tuesday option from my list. And then I hit OK once I have things finalized. Now, the rule reads, apply this rule after the message arrives with Tech Tuesday, or Tech Tuesday, or Tech in the subject line. And then I click Next since there are no more variables to add it. From there, I'd like to move it to a specified folder called Tech Tuesday. And it brings up the file system, and I select Tech Tuesday as the file. I hit OK, and then I could finish the rule. I could continue to get more and more specific with this rule, however. For instance, if I hit Next, it'll show me exceptions to the rules that I've just created. So, for example, I could say, except if received by our marketing manager, or other things like that. And I would just continue to add this the same way until I get as specific as I need to for my rule. I'm going to cancel out of this rule, but normally once you hit OK, it'll appear here, and you can turn it on and off by just clicking on that checkbox right next to it. Once you're done, you hit Apply, and then OK. And you're done. Other than that, there's only one other thing I really wanted to mention about Outlook, and that's out-of-office emails. You can set this up by hitting Automatic Replies under your Info menu of your File section of Outlook. If I click on Automatic Replies, a little menu pops up here. I hit Send Automatic Replies, and then click Only Send during this time range. From here, I can select the dates and times of the time range that I'm looking at, and then I type my email for anyone inside and outside my organization. Now, what I will say is while you're doing this, you want to make sure that you fill in both options, but both options will only be relevant if you actually have organized contacts list in Outlook and have those specified by who is within your organization and outside your organization. I fill it in both ways just to make sure I have everyone covered, but realistically, you might only need to fill in the outside my organization section or inside. You can even get even more specific and apply rules to these automatic replies. Same way we just did. Once you have everything set up, you hit OK, and it'll automatically send these replies to anyone who sends you an email within the specified time range. That's how I set up my out-of-office notices. So if anyone emails me and I'm, say, on vacation, they know I'm on vacation, how long I'll be gone for, and when I will return, and what to do if they really need an answer quick. I kind of lied a little bit, but the only other thing I'd like to mention are recurring meetings. A lot of people know how to manage and edit the meetings functionality of Outlook. So for now, we're just going to quick create a meeting on Monday, August 10th at 1 p.m. I can fill out my subject of my meeting, add in a location, and invite attendees. But when I'm ready to, say, have this meeting recur, people tend to get a little confused. A lot of times they create a lot of separate little appointments and maybe fill it out month by month by month, and that actually spams the attendees with a month by month by month request for each individual appointment. And you don't have to do that. All you need to do is hit this little recurrence button up here under the appointment main menu, and it will allow you to set your recurrence patterns. You can customize things by daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly, and you can even get specific for what days of the week you want or what number of weeks you want things to repeat. Under daily, for example, I have every day set for a personal rule to remember to fill out our Cornerstone, Cornerstone questionnaire to see if anyone has contracted symptoms of COVID. Additionally, I could set it for every other day by typing 2 in this box, or set up the recurrence to only every weekday by clicking every weekday under daily. If I wanted something to occur, or if I wanted something to occur every specific days of a week, I could set it to recur and click on each of these days that I want it to recur with no end in sight, and it'll automatically recur on those days of the week every week. Or maybe I just want it to happen every other week. I would type 2 in there. Or every third week, or 3 weeks, and I could type 3 in there then. After I get past 3, I actually tend to step it up to monthly because there are normally about 4 weeks in a month. And in that case, if I go to monthly, I can choose a specific day of every month, the second Monday of every month, for example, or I can just get more specific with once per month how often I want this to occur. I can even set up if I want it bi-monthly or tri-monthly, and what specific day of the week and what number of that I want. I can also get into yearly options by clicking on the number below. And I can set things up to occur every 1, 2, or 3 years out, or as far out as I need on a specific date of every year. Then this range of recurrence under here actually controls how long this recurrence will go for, no matter what your selection option. I like to do maybe 10 occurrences. And I would do that by first selecting a start date, and then selecting end after 10 occurrences. I could also choose a solid date for these recurrences to end by using this drop down here and selecting end by. Or I can click no end date and it'll just go on ad infinitum. Once I'm done, I'm just going to make this a test and have it recur every Monday and Sunday of every week with no end, and save and close. If I then go to my mail folder, I can see every Monday and Sunday. If I click on those options, I have a test recurring appointment. If I double click on that to reopen it, it'll give me the option of opening the occurrence or opening the series. An occurrence is an actual individual meeting, while a series refers to the entire recurring series of appointments. If I click Open Occurrence here, and then hit Delete, then it'll prompt me one more time. Do you want to delete all occurrences or just this one? I'm going to choose Delete this occurrence and hit OK, and then go back to my mail calendar here. As you can see, the meeting that I had created, sorry about that, on the 16th of August is no longer there. But the rest of the recurrences, if I click on the 23rd, still are. If I double click on that now and click Open Series and hit Delete, then it will actually delete the entire recurrence series, and I no longer have these appointments active. That's about it for common Outlook things, but there's also common Excel traits that I think people should know about. I'm going to go ahead and open that now. I created kind of a sample file for Excel, and I actually created it off of this randomly generated name system. So none of these are real names, none of these are real commissions or real commission information, and none of this actually either are accurate rates for the respective carriers that we're talking about here. I just completely randomly generated this, so don't go out thinking there's someone actually named Jamie Wilder under Oscar who enrolled in 2019 and has paid these wildly shifting amounts of commission information. Please don't do that. I promise I'm not violating any confidentiality or HIPAA agreement here. There are a few different things in Excel that I think can help everyone. The first is removing duplicates. Now, as you can see, I pretty randomly generated this data, but there are still duplicate clients. I can remove duplicates very easily from my data set by clicking on Data after highlighting all of the relevant data and hitting Remove Duplicates. If I choose to remove duplicates, I then have to specify what columns I want to take into account for the duplicates to be removed. Now, in this case, I don't care specifically about the client information I've received, or the carrier respectively, or the year enrolled, or any of the commission data that I randomly generated. Let's say I just want to make sure that there are no duplicate clients with the same carrier and year enrolled. I first had to click Unselect Data, then I selected each of the criteria I want to remove duplicates from. I hit OK, and it shows me right here that there were no duplicates found. That's great and all, but for something we're going to do here in a second, I want to make sure that there are no duplicate clients at all in our system. In order to do that, I remove duplicates again, unselect all, select client, and then I would hit OK. Before I do that, however, I want to bring up this My Data Has Headers section located right here. The reason I want to mention that is actually because I want to make sure that everyone has that selected if they have headers on their data. Otherwise, it'll remove duplicate header information along the line. I hit OK. And it actually found 4 duplicate client names as I went through here. I'm going to hit OK. And that should remove any duplicate information that you have based on your criteria from your documents. That way, if you're trying to get a list of all of your respective clients, you can do so pretty easily without having to factor out a bunch of duplicates and to know how many clients you have. Additionally, as I scroll down, as you can see, my header information doesn't come with me. This can get especially tiresome in long lists of data. If I want to make sure that I can drag that header information with me, I just have to go to the View section, Freeze Panes, and click Freeze Top Row. This doesn't actually remove that top row from your data set, it just pins it to the very top line. and that way you can keep your header information on any table you create as you scroll through the data. I find this especially helpful in very long tables. The last thing I really wanted to bring up as far as Excel goes is just sort of notation of range. This is something I find that people mess up quite often if they're trying to enter formulas manually or trying to select a range of data. Specifically, what I'm referring to here are dollar signs, and I'm going to use the example of the sum function. Now, I like to type my functions manually. However, if you use the function menu located under the home screen right here, you would get to the function that we're doing by clicking on sum. Now, sum automatically selects a range of data if it is attached to a range of data. And as you can see, it's automatically summing the entire column that I have listed. But the important thing to know about this equation is this D2 colon D45. That colon there is telling Excel it wants the entire range of cells from D2 to D45 included in the sum function, which just adds all of the values of the respective cells in that range. If I wanted to just add D2 and D45 here, I would hit comma. As you can see, that split it into two selections, one in green, one in blue, the blue being D2 and the green being D45. I don't really like that, however, personally, because I want the entire range. So I'm going to backspace over that and hit colon on my keyboard. That's actually shift colon to get to if you're using a standard layout. Additionally, from here, I'm going to hit enter and then just show you why this is going to be so important. Now, were I to then drag this formula down, let's say to here, as you can see, our values have changed. And specifically, I want you to look at this section right here of the formula we have shown. The section that says D2 to D45 in cell D46. As I click on that and scroll through my section, you can see the numbers have changed from the sum value. Additionally, if I drag the same data set this way and scroll through, my letters have changed. These letters and numbers correspond to row numbers and column letter headings in Excel. It's important when you're doing formulas to understand what these labels mean and how to make sure that you can lock them if you're trying to manually extend formulas along lines. In order to lock column data, you simply put a $sign before the column letter in your formula. If I want to lock row numbers, I simply put $signs before my row numbers. And that tells Excel that I don't want these values to change as I move my formula around. If I drag this function down this way now, as you can see, they all equal 88. And if I scroll down, all of the sum values remain the same. If I do, however, want something to change after I've added my $signs, for this instance, let's say I wanted to automatically sum up all of rows D, E, F, G, and H respectively, all the way through to P throughout this function. I could leave the $sign in front of D empty. And then I can drag this all the way through to here. And as you can see, I've added all of the individual respective row values. If I scroll over to the right, as you can see, the column I have highlighted corresponds to the column letters that I had selected, unlike in my previous option. One creative use of this that I actually use quite frequently is I like to place a $sign here at the end if I'm trying to get a total sum of every value within a range of cells. That's not just one column. What I can then do is drag this all the way to the end of our monthly data and let go. Now, it's not going to show you the range of data I have selected if I just scroll through, but look at the letter of D as I scroll. It remains the same. Now, though, look at the value in front of D. GHIJKLMN. Now, if I click on this right here, as you can see, my range of data that it's summing is every single amount of every single line. And that means that the total number of commissions that I've received during this year for all of these clients is $11,347. That's a very quick way that I like to do in order to get that sum. Of course, that being said, the reason this works is because I have locked down, and actually you would want to lock down this part of the cell. I've locked down the cell reference in this case for the very top cell of the range I'm referencing, but I haven't locked down the row of the very bottom cell I've referenced. Because of this, if I drag this across, it changes the range of the data set that I'm adding. That's just a little sly maneuver that I personally like to use if I'm trying to get sums very quickly. Now, the last thing I really wanted to mention that I get asked about a lot, are pivot tables. Pivot tables are very useful in the case that you want to just accurately summarize a bit of data very quickly in a chart or in some other sort of shorter condensed data list. They're very useful if you have lists of over 100 values that you're trying to just see trends in. In order to insert one of these, I would hit Insert and click on Pivot Table. I would then select the range of the data that I want to have selected for my pivot table. In this case, I want the clients, the years they're enrolled, the carriers, and all of the respective monthly commission values. From there, I'm going to click New Worksheet. You could also click Existing Worksheet here, and that would create a table in a worksheet that you suggest, but typically I just recommend creating it in a new worksheet. If I hit OK, it opens up something that looks a little like this. Now let's say I wanted to see all of the month of January by clients and have the table be able to be sorted by carrier. That way I can easily tell who belongs to what carrier and how much I made on that carrier during the month of January. In order to do that, I would first add the row labels. The row labels in this case I would consider to be clients, and the way I would do that is by clicking on the field that I'd like to select and dragging it into each of these four respective areas down below. I put client under row labels because these are the actual labels of my rows of the table that I'm going to create. Now, the values, which is the next square over of this table, are going to be the values located under 120. That's because I want all of the individual values under this header. Lastly, for column labels, I really don't actually need those in this case. But if I wanted to split this up by the columns, I could move something under there as well. Personally, I don't see a need to add column labels to this, but if I wanted to display everything on one chart, I would put carrier under that. And now I have each of the individual carriers listed under here, all of the individual clients listed here, and I can pretty easily see what carrier each client belongs to and how much they contributed to the total that I've made. I can also see the sum of all of the values of each of the carrier below down here to make a pretty easy chart. However, I don't think that's the most useful way to display this data. Let's say I wanted to select individual carriers and view them that way. I could move this carrier information under a report filter and click on this drop-down to select which individual carrier I want to see. I click Golden Rule. Now I'm only seeing Golden Rule commissions. That sort of ends our Excel lecture, but before I do that, I want to bring to the forefront something that you can do in most versions of Windows operating systems that I don't think people tend to think about, and that's take a screenshot. Those are very helpful if you're actually trying to show something to a tech head like me, and you're trying to describe what error you're receiving or what issue you're having. If I click on my Windows button, I have it pinned right here, but you can search through all your programs and files on your machine and just type SNIP. Then under Programs, you will see the snipping tool. I'm going to select it, and it will actually open up this thing called the snipping tool. What it does is it allows me to choose what I want on the screen to capture as a picture. I'm going to move this Excel window back over, hit New, and that will allow me to sort of see my data in a gray overlay. Then let's say I want to select the entire Excel window that I have shown. I simply drag and drop on the screen where I want the picture to be taken, and it automatically opens up something like this. This allows me to see exactly what you wanted to show me as a picture. If I click on the Save option, I can save this as an image file. That's that little floppy disk here. Or if I just wanted to copy and paste that image into an email, I could hit the copy button here and paste it into an email by right-click Paste or Control-V. And that way you can show me specifically what you want. You can also use the pen option that's already selected here to draw on the image and underline something you're trying to show me, or circle it. And that's the method I prefer for taking screenshots in Windows. Now, before we get going, we did actually have some general questions. These questions were submitted by viewers, and I think they're actually really useful for people to understand things. The first question was actually submitted by Steve, and he asks, are programs like Remote PC safe to use? The answer is sometimes. Remote PC is a program that allows you to access your computer from a remote location. The reason I say sometimes is you're going to want to use a corporate VPN if you're going to have this feature turned on. And you're going to want to make sure that you have a firewall installed on your PC. A firewall blocks all incoming traffic on a network, except for those that it designates as approved. Because of this, it will only allow your request to access your data. Use a VPN if you're going to use this function. If you want to learn more about VPNs, I'd highly recommend looking at our VPN webinar that we have posted under the Tech Tuesday file under our recorded webinars on our website that I mentioned previously. But suffice it to say, there are two types of VPN. You're going to want the work type of VPN while using this feature. Additionally, we have a question from Harriet asking, what can you tell me about WineGuard or other RV and internet options? Specifically, what are the differences between these options and hotspot? And this is another question that we actually covered a little bit in a previous Tech Tuesday, but I feel like this one is a little more relevant to expound upon. Using a home internet connection, such as Wi-Fi, your internet's actually carried through a cable. That cable then connects to your internet service provider's network, and they then allow your search or internet request to go through. Using, however, a hotspot, you're communicating on a carrier's network. A carrier's network is kind of like a ISP network or a normal home network, except that carriers communicate through carrier towers. These are the sorts of things that hotspots are. They're internet service provided by a cellular network. and they just act like little Wi-Fi receivers in order for you to connect devices to that network. The main difference between those two is that using a home network, you're going to be paying for your data transfer speed, whereas using one of these mobile networks, you're going to be paying for the amount of data you use. The reason for this relates specifically to the differences between the two networks, but if you didn't watch it, our last Tech Tuesday was actually more specific about these kinds of differences. Now, RV internet, similar to WineGuard, actually makes use of something a little bit different. What it does is it places a physical satellite on your RV, and it actually sends any internet request you have to a satellite orbiting the Earth. These networks are typically hit or miss as far as reliability, and they tend to be a little bit slower than either hotspot networks or home networks, just because of the distances involved and the number of steps it takes to relay your internet request through these networks, along with the positioning of the satellites that are in orbit, and these change constantly. So your service is going to be a little bit more hit or miss when you use a satellite provider. The main similarity, however, from satellite providers to hotspot providers is that a satellite provider is going to have, these waves being what's transmitting data, and it's going to be wireless. You're also going to be paying based off of the amount of data you use on the network, unfortunately. So if you're, just staying in one location, I'd highly recommend using something akin to the ISP or home network. If you're going to be traveling around a lot, but you're staying, in cities, I recommend using hotspots. And if you're going to be traveling outside of cities a lot and want to maintain an internet connection, I'd recommend using something like what are they called? iDirect or Usenet. SpaceNet's another common one, or Comtech RV communication provider. The one thing I will note is that unlike most other network security options or other networking options, you're going to want to actually buy your dish. That's because dish is well expensive, normally running between $150 to $300. Will actually typically work across a bunch of different internet options. So if you swap your internet provider, then you can tend to keep the same dish. Now, that being said, I do think it's actually interesting that Elon Musk is venturing into this sort of game. If you ever heard of Starlink, it's going to be a satellite-based internet service, but it aims at being actually reliable, unlike these HughesNets or other satellite providers. They're typically all you can get if you're in a rural area. So if you're in a rural area, I'd highly recommend looking into Starlink. What it does differently is it actually has a lot of satellites in orbit. The goal of this is to make sure that all satellite communications can be done over short distance, and that your connection is going to be reliable no matter where you are on the globe. It's actually pretty exciting, and I'd highly recommend looking into it as an option. So thanks for bringing that up, Harriet. We did actually have another connection question from Mike, but this relates to speed tests. And this is where I'm going to actually exit out of my presentation again and show you what a speed test really is. The question we received is, what goes into a speed test? What variables are considered? And what do I want to look at when I'm looking at a speed test? Now, I'm going to show you actually a speed test from Bing specifically because I like Bing speed test. It tends to remain a little bit impartial unless you're trying to use a non-Microsoft based product. So I'm going to go to www.bing.com. And if I just type search, or if I type specifically speed test into the search result there, I get a little speed test that I see. Now, if you're watching this, we actually have this IP address over here blocked out, because if you have that, you can actually get into our system, and that's kind of a bad thing. But if I hit start, it's going to give me a few different numbers under here. The first number over here on the left is called ping, What ping is the amount of delay in communication between your computer and the server that it's testing your internet speed on. The next number that just generated is called your download speed. What that means is how fast you're actually downloading data from that server. Now, this download speed here will typically be faster than any upload speed you have, but it's how long it takes that data from the server to be received by your computer. As you can see, we have 77.28 megabits per second, which is actually pretty okay as far as business class internet is concerned. Then we have upload speed. Upload speed is the amount of time that it will take you to upload data from your computer to the internet. If you're uploading YouTube videos, for example, this is a good thing to consider. Because of this is just being upload speed, it's not really most critical to most people's computer use, but it is how quickly you'll be able to upload files to, say, a K drive or some other drive on your internet. So it's something good to consider. Another question we actually had was from Andrea. And Andrea asked, how would you recommend sharing links online to e-sign applications, or how would you put those online? And my recommendation is actually just attaching them as emails to clients and sending them respectively. A lot of different carriers use a lot of different online apps and tools. And because of this, I'd recommend sending things via email. Also, it's going to be very specific. A lot of the time, the contracting that clients are signing. So because of that, I'd recommend just emailing them. I really need a little bit more clarification from you, Andrea, and I sent you a little bit of email if you're talking about maybe uploading things to the internet, because that will be different based on who's providing your website and other sorts of things. So please reach out. And the last question that we had submitted was from Jim. He says, a notice from Microsoft says it needs access to my Gmail account. Why and how do I get around this? This actually relates to a third-party app that Jim is using. And if you're using an app on your computer like Mail, Microsoft will need access to it. The reason being because Microsoft is going to be running that app, and they need the ability to see and gain access to your email. If you see a request like this and you recognize that it's the provider of the service that you're using, you can typically go ahead and give them access. But that's why I recommend something like Outlook, because it doesn't prompt you to do that. And that way you're making sure your client information that you're sending and receiving isn't being shared to the people just providing your email service. Gmail, however, will not do this either if you're using their online option. In order to get to that, you would log into your Google account, click on Gmail online, being through Firefox or Google Chrome or whatever browser you're using, and then you would check it there. Now, this was a rather long presentation, and I'm not shocked if you were just focused on a specific part or looking back to look at a frequently asked question or see if I answered your question here. Like I said before, if you're trying to get a specific question answered, I'd highly recommend just calling me or sending me an email at tlevine@sierraandstone.com. That about wraps it up for us today, but thank you very much for taking a look at this, and I hope you've had a wonderful time taking a look at our presentations. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.